Okay, part 2 of the practice for the bluebonnets. Now, when you look at this photo, you will see that there's bluebonnets pretty much straight across here and a little bit of blue back up in there. Let's see if it shows, yeah. So the temptation is to just make a straight line of bluebonnets across there. And I would say, don't. They look pretty in life that way, but that could be a little bit boring. So when you look at this piece, you will see that this artist has distributed the blue. Oh, there's some in the background, and there's bits in the foreground, some a little bit down here, up that way. It's not a straight across thing. So here we've got more darks over here. I tried to make this a little bit more interesting. I probably could have varied it a little bit more than what I did. Probably should have. So right here, I have white ink. That's the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. That's the water soluble one. And an ultramarine here. So what I'm going to do is, first I want to make the hazy part. Remember, when you look at this, you have some dark blue, or I should say bright, really. They're dark, but they're bright. It stands out some, the pure ultramarine. But back in underneath, we've got the soft color. So to make the soft color, I pulled up some a really thick mixture out of the ink jar, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue. Now remember, if I mix the color that I want to see on the page, two things are going to happen. One, I'm going to apply it more thinly so that we can see the underneath through it. So it needs to be relatively strong. At the same time, we know that this color will lighten. So the smartest thing, which I'm not going to do, I never do the smart thing. The smartest thing would be to take a mixture and decide where I would like to put some, and then go off and let it dry. I'm thinking that that isn't light enough because it's already the same value as the background. So I'm going to try to go back and add a little white into it. That's probably closer to what I need. Whoa, that's lighter than what I need, but I think I'll leave it. So, you know, I may want some soft edges on this, but the cloud itself is so soft that I probably don't need to break up the edges. All right, so you could plan, you could think ahead. I kind of do it spontaneously, but that's not necessarily the best thing to do. So I've got a mixture here that's pretty darn light. Look at that. Remember, this dries darker. Once you add whites to watercolor, it's going to dry, generally, it's going to dry darker than it started out. So let's put a little bit of stuff down there. Oh, maybe there'll be a little streak of blue in the background that'll hardly show up. So this has got to lose some edges because I've got that down there pretty thick. But maybe I won't lose all the edges. We'll see how that turns out. I really don't know because one of the things that you want to do when you're working with watercolor is to experiment and see if you don't already know. I would say that watercolor, just art in general probably, but watercolor especially because it's just the chemistry of it, it just invites you to play with it. This is a little thinner mixture. I think I want it a little stronger than that. There we go. So, whoa, and that's probably too white because we don't want, we're going to add some little white dots at the end. And they're going to say, oh, these are bluebonnets when you see that. So, remember, this is like the expressionists, you know, impressionists. This is impressionistic. Oh, I'll put a little, oh, that's darker there. Oh, I think I'll keep that. See, you do things and then you edit the thing you put down, or you try something else, or you throw it out entirely and start over. Okay, there. Kind of like that. I've got some edges on it and some that's not. So I'm not going to blow dry that. At least let it dry enough that when you use the blow dryer on it, that it won't move the color. Well, I'm looking at this as I stood up and decided I want a little bit of some blue back off in here. Maybe there. Okay. Never hurts to back up from the subject. Now see, that doesn't look very blue, does it? Because it's over the yellow. Let's pick up a little more white and see. See, the white will cover some of the underneath yellow. And we'll keep a little more of the blueness there. You see, I'm just editing. You put something down, and it rarely ever goes down perfectly. So don't keep putting more stuff down. Play with what you've already put down. Remember, this stuff, you're working in time. This stuff dries on you. So have a good time with it. Okay, there. Okay, that really improved the whole thing, I think. Okay, now, that's dry. So we can see there are plenty of little blue specks in here. Some of them are definitely little spatters. Some of them are dropped in. I may see a big spatter in there too. So let's try this. So I have some ultramarine here that's just pure ultramarine. I want my brush to be juicy enough. I want the paint mixture to be just juicy enough that it can flow down off of the brush. So let's see, I don't want to cover all these places. Oh, that really stands out. I think that stands out more than I meant for it to. Oh, I don't know about that. Well, let's do a couple more places. We'll put more of this dark on the darker areas. Ooh. Well, what's that about? Okay, let's just try a little blot here. That's better because I was just getting it too dark for the area. I wanted a variation in blues, but I didn't want them to scream at each other, the different blues. I want them to feel like they belong together. So maybe just a little less color here. I'm not sure what I'm picking up. And there are smaller areas of blue than there are of the dark blue than there are of the light blue. And I think that works really well. I'm looking at what this artist has done, and I'm deciding whether that's what I like or not. I'm not just going with what he says, and you shouldn't just go with what I say. Okay. Well, I took up so much of that that it no longer looks blue. Let's put just a little bit of white into that blue to give it make it a little lighter while still having the density to cover what's underneath it. Yeah, I think that's better. Oh, that's definitely better. Let's do a little more of that over here. Well, it's still wet. It'll kind of flow in there. Well, that's too light. We'll see what happens here. I'll put some light and soften some light coming into the blue. That may work, actually. Now, we're also going to need, and I would carry this on across, but we're also going to need some fine speckles out here. And I'm going to make those a mid-tone. That is, this is the blue with a little bit of white in it. Because remember, this area is a lot lighter. Also, I'm still using a small brush. I've got it pretty well loaded. Yeah, sometimes it's best to warm up when you do your splatters. These are working pretty well, but oh, they're too dark still. So I'm just going to come in here and blot them. Oh, they still look kind of dark. I think I like them. I'm weakening a couple that I think are maybe calling too much attention to themselves. This one I think is okay. It just needs friends. Well, maybe they all need to go a little lighter there. So you can see how I may start out with spatters, but again, I'm editing. I can't tell you how the editing, I've always called it tweaking, but I think editing makes more sense to especially to people that are new to watercolor or new to painting. I'm sure everybody tweaks, whether you're, no matter what medium you're in. Because that's part of, that's just you applying your judgment. That needs to be a little lighter. Put a touch of white in it. Oh, is that too much? Well, let's see. It used to be when I first started teaching, if someone really had kind of a mess there, I would tell them they really needed to start over. It's important to learn how to fix things too. A lot of great paintings are paintings that were fixed. But I didn't know how to work with them that way. Just getting a little more paint out here and just a touch of white into it. I'm just spattering over here and a little up there. Okay. Let's try it this way. I've got some light spatters. Now let's just put some darker paint into the light spatters here and there. Oh. Again, you can blot them and they'll get lighter, but if you need them to be a lot lighter, you need to get them wetter and then blot them. and you can take them even lighter. See, like that. And I think I'm okay with this kind of what's going on over here. We're going off the page there now. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with this. What I wanted is I want to avoid getting too much texture. And generally when I see what I call too much texture, it's texture that has too much contrast in it. Real high contrast texture that there's a lot of it and it just kind of kills the shape of the overall in favor of all these little bitty tiny things. So I'm pretty happy with this. And the only thing left is a few tiny specks of white. And they need to be tiny and not bright white, because again, you can get too much texture in here. I've got to say, now that I've dried this, that I think I've pushed the texture here just a little bit more than what I want. I think it's just a little too busy, particularly here and here, where some of the light areas are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and soften that just by getting it wet. The lightened areas will tend to stay better because they're really a different chemistry. So I'm going to work on them a little bit more than I do the other areas. Now, of course, that looks softer there, but once I blot, it may not be. I've got that pretty dark there. I think I'll leave that. Yeah, I feel better about these places now. They were a little too contrasty. And I didn't think that. Now, this is still a pretty busy area, but we are in pretty close to bluebonnets there. And as you can see, as we go back, one of the things that we're doing is that we're not only getting lighter in general, we're lowering the contrast some. I mean, we have bits of high contrast, but in general, there's a lot less activity back here. And the activity that is there is much, much smaller. So you can also think about, you could lower contrast as you go, as they get misty in the distance. Obviously, though, sometimes just allowing some strong darks to pop on off in the distance is also an advantage. So we don't always do what nature does. Oh, please. The lights here show up a little stronger on the video than they actually are here. The video increases contrast in some areas, and we can't do much about that. I am going to take a stylus that has a very small point on it. I'm sure there are plenty of other things you could do this with, but I think that generally a brush is just not going to fill the bill. So, I'll tell you what, let's try. I've got some white out here, and it's a little bit wetter than what I've got in the bottle. So the thing is well, I don't have enough on it. Be cautious with this. What you don't want are some big white blobs on here. And I'm not going to put these everywhere. There's something about just a few bits of white. It's like no, Saber, no. It's like, sorry, talking to the dog. She thought someone was at the door when I tapped that. well, it's like that business of that landscape artist will tell you about. If you paint one cow where you can tell it's a cow, then all you got to do is have a few more blobs in the distance, and you will read those as cows. So here we're turning blue flowers into blue bonnets just by having some little bits of white. Boy, I don't even know if that shows up on the video there, but it does show up. There's a chance that when this dries that I may actually tint it, small as they are. If they're too bright, I'm not going to like it. So just throw a few around in here. Ooh. Working with this stylus is it's a little like a brush in that it's a whole new learning experience. And how thick your paint is and how deep you dip it, etc., will make a difference. So you kind of have to get used to one of these too. Every time you've got a new paint mixture out, you should test. Okay, what I don't want to do is equal spacing here, which is kind of what I just did. I just fill in some other places so that I really didn't want this much detail. I think that'll work. So I've got a little bit more of it in one area and a few that are just sparsely, out there. Okay. So, like I said, I may tint those, but this is the end of the video.